Good day, everyone. For today's discussion, we're going to be talking about the nature of learning styles. And here are the objectives. At the end of the lesson, students should be able to identify one's own learning style, illustrate the different learning styles, and analyze the concepts of individual differences in learning styles. It's tempting to try to pin down one perfect way of learning, but it can also be dangerous. Everyone's approach to learning is based on a complex mix of strengths and preferences, and we absorb and apply new concepts, skills, and information in different ways at different times. So, however helpful it would be to find out how each of us does it best, there are many ways why even asking the question is far from straightforward. After all, how we learn depends a great deal on what we are learning, and our preferred learning techniques might not, in fact, be the most useful. Despite this, many scientists, psychologists, and education experts have tried to identify distinct innate learning styles. So, what are learning styles? Each learning style is the preferential way in which a student absorbs, processes, comprehends, and retains information. It refers to the unique or particular way a person approaches learning and studying. Now let's discover the nature of learning styles. Each person prefers different learning styles and techniques. Learning styles group common ways that people learn. Everyone has a mix of learning styles. One may use different styles in different circumstances, and there is no right mix of learning styles, nor is there a fixed learning style, and there is no best learning style, nor is there a bad learning style. Now let's talk about the processes that are involved in learning style. So let's first talk about the perceivers. Here we have concrete perceivers who absorb information through direct experience by doing, acting, sensing, and feeling. And we also have abstract perceivers who process information through analysis, observation, and thinking. Next, we have the processors. Here we have the active processors who make sense out of an experience by immediately using the new information. And we also have reflective processors who make sense of the new information by reflecting on it and by thinking about it. Now let's move on to the learning thinking styles. So for the first category, we have the sensory preference style of learning. First, we have the auditory learners, and here are their characteristics. Auditory learners would rather listen to things being explained than read about them. Reciting information out loud and having music in the background may be a common study method, and other noises may become a distraction, resulting in a need for a relatively quiet place. And here are the two types of auditory learners. First, we have the listeners. They remember things said to them and make the information their own. And they learn by reviewing in their heads what they heard. Second, we have the talkers. They prefer to talk and discuss. And they find themselves talking to those around them. And they tend to whisper comments to themselves. And here are the suited teaching methods and activities for auditory learners. Teachers may use audio tapes and videos, storytelling, songs, jazz chants, memorization, and drills, and allow learners to work in pairs and small groups. Next, we have the visual learners, and here are their characteristics. Visual learners learn best by looking at graphics, watching a demonstration, or reading. For them, it's easy to look at charts and graphs, but they may have difficulty focusing while listening to an explanation. And here are the two types of visual learners. First, we have the visual iconic learners who usually have good picture memory and they are interested more in visual imagery such as film, graphic displays, or pictures to solidify their learning. Second, we have our visual symbolic learners who feel comfortable with abstract symbolism such as mathematical formula or written word and they like to read about things. And here are the suited teaching methods and activities for visual learners. We have wall displays, posters, realia, flashcards, and graphic organizers. Now let's talk about kinesthetic learners, and here are their characteristics. Kinesthetic learners process information best through a hands-on experience, and for them, doing an activity can be the easiest way for them to learn. And sitting still while studying may be difficult, but writing things down makes it easier to understand. And here are the suited teaching methods and activities for kinesthetic learners. We have physical activities, competitions, board games, role plays, demonstrations, and projects. Now, for the second category, let's discuss about the dominated hemisphere. So let's first talk about those learners who are left brain dominated, also known as analytic thinkers. And here are their characteristics. So they are also known as three seers who tend to see the world of details and hierarchies of information. And they prefer to learn in a step-by-step sequential format, also known as successive processors. And here are some of the suited teaching methods and activities for left brain dominated learners. So the teacher may give verbal instructions and explanations, and it's also a good idea to set some closed tasks to which students can discover the right answer. Now let's talk about those learners who are right brain dominated, also known as global thinkers. And here are their characteristics. They are also known as forest seers who tend to see the world pattern rather than particle elements, and they prefer to learn beginning with general concepts and then going on to specifics, also known as simultaneous processors. And here are some of the suited teaching methods and activities for right brain dominated learners. So as a teacher, you may write instructions as well as giving them verbally, demonstrate what you would like your students to do, give students clear guidelines, a structure for tasks, and set some open-ended tasks for which there is no right answer, or use realia and other things that students may manipulate while learning, and sometimes allow students to respond by drawing. And here is a comparison between left brain dominated and right brain dominated learners. Analytic thinkers are verbal learners, while global thinkers are visual learners. Analytic thinkers respond to the word learning, while global thinkers respond to the tone of voice. Next, analytic thinkers are sequential, while global thinkers are random. Analytic thinkers respond to information linearly, while global thinkers process information in varied order. Analytic thinkers respond to logic, while global thinkers respond to emotion. Analytic thinkers plan ahead, while global thinkers are impulsive. Analytic thinkers recall people's names, while global thinkers recall people's faces. And analytic thinkers speak with few gestures, while global thinkers use gesture when speaking. And analytic thinkers are punctual, while global thinkers are less punctual. And analytic thinkers prefer formal study design, while global thinkers prefer sound or music background while studying. Lastly, analytic thinkers prefer bright lights while studying, And global thinkers prefer frequent mobility while studying. Now let's move on to the different learning styles, specifically the 6 influential models and theories. First, let's have David Kolb and experiential learning. So, this model of David Kolb of experiential learning stated that we learn continually, and in the process, we build particular strengths, and those strengths were said to give rise to personal preferences, which Kolb described in terms of 4 learning styles, which are accommodating, converging, diverging, and assimilating. So let's first talk about the convengers, or those learners who deal better with abstract ideas but still like to end up with concrete results. And they understood theories but wanted to test them out in practice. And they think about things and then try out their ideas to see if they work in practice. And they prefer to work alone or independently. When they learn, they will ask how. So these learners think and do, meaning there's a combination of abstract conceptualization or thinking and active experimentation or doing. And they prefer technical tasks like experimenting and simulation. And they excel in the practical application of ideas, especially in situations that require only one best correct answer and solution to a problem. Now let's have the divergers, or those learners who use personal experiences and practical ideas to formulate theories that they could apply more widely. So they take experiences and think deeply about them. When they learn, they will ask why. And they like working with others but distressed by conflicts in the group. And these learners feel and watch, meaning there's a combination of concrete experience or feeling and reflective observation or watching. And they excel in generating ideas and brainstorming, and they have imaginative ability to view situations from many perspectives. And we also have the accommodators who have the most hands-on approach with a strong preference for doing rather than thinking, and they learn better by themselves than with others. And when they learn, they will ask what if or why not. So they use concrete experiences and active experimentation, and these learners do and feel. So meaning there's a combination of active experimentation and concrete experiences. And they're also known as risk takers, and they use instincts to solve problems in trial and error manner. And they are attracted to new challenges and experiences. Lastly, we have the assimilators, who are most comfortable working with abstract concepts, and they extend their understanding by developing new theories of their own. So they prefer to think than to act, and when they learn, they will ask, what is there I can know? And they learn best with lectures. So these learners watch and think, meaning there's a combination of reflective observation or watching and abstract conceptualization or thinking. So they predominantly use abstract conceptualization and reflection, and use inductive reasoning and assimilate different observations into an interactive explanation. So Kolb said that it is beneficial to know which type of learner you are in order for you to play to your strengths. And he also believed that educators and trainers could tailor their learning or teaching methods to different people's learning styles. Now let's move on to Honey and Mumford's learning styles. Peter Honey and Alan Mumford developed Kolb's model by focusing on how learning is used in practice, particularly at work. They identified 4 learning styles, namely activist, pragmatist, reflector, and theorist, using terms that we might naturally pick to describe ourselves and our colleagues. So for activists, they prefer to do lots of action and new experiences. And when it comes to reflectors, they do observations and they think before they act a particular approach. And theorists are good at making connections and abstracting ideas from experience. And they look into rationality and logic. And they analyze situations and then generalize things. And for pragmatists, they practice and implement the things they learned and they practically apply those learned things. Now let's talk about visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learners. Educational psychologist Walter Barb and his colleagues propose three modalities of learning, which are visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learning. These were often referred to simply as VAK. He was clear that everyone had strengths, weaknesses, and preferences in each of the three modalities. The most effective learning utilized all three in combination. He said that the mix we achieved depended on many factors and would like to change over time. And the VAK model was popular and widely applied. But like some of the earlier models, it became associated with a fixed outlook on learning, and many people took it to mean that learners could be classified by a single modality. As a visual learner, for example, with little room for maneuver, and there was confusion over whether the VAK definition referred to someone's innate abilities, their personal preferences, or both. Eventually, Neil Fleming extended VAK to VARK, exploring four modalities: visual, oral, reading or writing, and kinesthetic. For visual learning, there is preference for the use of maps, images, and graphic organizers to access and understand new information. For auditory learning, there is preference for listening and speaking situations such as lectures and discussions to understand new information. And for reading or writing, there's preference for reading and writing to learn new information. And these learners learn best through words, and they are fast note takers or avid readers. And for kinesthetic learning, the preference is on tactile representation of information, and these students learn better through hands-on activities or figuring out things using the hand. Now let's talk about the Learning Styles Task Force. In the 1980s, American educationalists were still trying to find out as much as they could about learning styles to help classroom teachers to achieve the best possible results. The National Association of Secondary School Principals, or NASSP, formed a research task force and proposed additional factors that might affect someone's ability to learn. And this included the way study was organized, level of motivation, and even the time of day when learning took place. They divided learning styles into three categories, which are cognitive, affective, and physiological. For cognitive learning, it's all about how we think, how we organize and retain information, and how we learn from our experiences. For affective learning, it's all about our attitudes and motivations and how they impact our approach to learning. And for physiological, it's a variety of factors based on our health, well-being, and the environment in which we learn. Lastly, we have the Index of Learning Styles. Various related questionnaires and tests quickly came into use, aimed at helping people to identify their personal learning style. One of the most popular was based on the Index of Learning Styles developed by Dr. Richard Felder and Barbara Solomon in the late 1980s. The questionnaire considered four dimensions, which are sensory or intuitive, visual or verbal, active or reflective, and sequential or global. The theory was that we're all somewhere on a continuum for each of them, and neither extreme was said to be good or bad. Instead, we do best by drawing on both ends of the spectrum. Questionnaires like this promise to define everyone's learning style so that they could address any imbalances and learn in the ways that would benefit them the most. Now let's move on to the criticisms of learning styles. This and other theories about learning styles have become extremely popular and widespread. However, a growing body of research has challenged many of their claims. Let's try to look at the four key criticisms that have been leveled against them. So, for the first criticism, it says, the science is not strong enough. We may express our preferences about how we learn, but they are not necessarily an accurate reflection of how our brains work. According to neuroscientist Susan Greenfield, the idea that we can be defined as purely visual, auditory, or kinesthetic learners is nonsense. That's because, she says, humans have evolved to build a picture of the world through our senses working in unison, exploiting the immense interconnectivity that exists in the brain. A study also found a little difference in learning outcomes when they matched with their test subjects' preferences, like visual or verbal, to the learning materials they were given. Next criticism, learning styles change. Attempts to diagnose someone's learning style once and for all will likely fail. As Eileen Carnell and Caroline Lodge explain in their book, Effective Learning, an individual's learning method will be different in different situations and likely change over time. Third criticism, strengths and preferences are not the same. An influential piece of research published in the Journal of Educational Psychology revealed big differences between people's assessed strengths and how they actually tackled learning tasks in practice. For example, someone who scores better in tests after hearing the information might still choose to learn by reading, simply because they enjoy that style of learning more. Fourth criticism, teaching to particular learning styles doesn't work. For psychologist Scott Lilienfeld, the idea that students learn best when teaching styles are matched to their learning styles is one of the 50 great myths of popular psychology. This, he says, encourages teachers to teach to students intellectual strength rather than their weaknesses, limiting their learning as a result. Using learning styles to improve learning. Despite the criticisms we've outlined, some of the ideas that underpin learning style theories still have value, especially the emphasis on metacognition, or thinking about thinking. Analyzing our thinking can help us to plan learning strategies that work for us. It can support us to become more organized in our studies, and to use prior knowledge as the foundation for new learning and to choose effective methods for different learning tasks. Plus, by examining the strengths and weaknesses, we can make the most of any aspect of learning that come naturally and that we enjoy, which also working on the areas that might be holding us back. And if you're eager to improve your personal approach to learning, here are three key steps to take. Step 1. See the big picture. Do everything you can to gain a rounded picture of your learning. Look at all the different reasons why you tend to tackle learning the way you do. And when you're in the process of learning, ask yourself why you're doing it a particular way. Is it because it's the most effective for you, or simply because it's what you've always done? Be wary of definitive judgments. Instead, consider different scenarios and try to differentiate between how you like to learn and how you learn best in a variety of learning situations. Step 2. Identify your strengths. Highlight the type of learning that worked best for you and the conditions for learning that support them. For instance, you might be more of an active learner who operates best in groups. Keep doing the things that give the best results to keep your learning fast and effective, and look for ways to improve them even more. But also leave room to practice and strengthen any learning behaviors that you find more difficult. Step 3. Work on your weaknesses. You can often improve areas of your learning that are letting you down simply by using them more. If you feel that you're not confident learning visually, for example, get into the habit of reading the charts and diagrams in an article before grappling with the ideas in the text. Or if you're an independent learner by nature, make a point of improving others in your problem solving from time to time. Also, actively look for opportunities to try out new ways to learn. You might be surprised about what works and about the new elements of learning that you enjoy. How to help other people to learn. Becoming more aware of your own strengths and preferences help you to appreciate and cater for the diverse ways in which others learn too. For example, when you're giving a presentation, chairing a meeting, or leading a training session, avoid leaning too heavily on the approach that you would enjoy yourself. Remember that some learners will benefit from visual aids while others will rely on listening to what you are saying or on watching your body language. Back up abstract theories with real life examples. Spend time discussing small details as well as outlining large scale ideas. You can't always cater for everyone, but you can better engage with your audience by allowing your different approaches to learning. If nothing else, your varied approach will keep people energized and alert. And that's it for today's discussion. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you learned a lot.